Right, so I can see you're all muted. That's really good. As ever, as we're going through, please do, if you feel like chipping in, chip in, of course, as long as it is relevant. In the archive room tonight, we have Dave, who is there.
Evening all.
And at the other side, we have our trustee, Bob, who was involved in the Katie project. So he will chip in at some point, I am sure. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to I've done it already. I'm trying to stop. I'll be saying like in a minute. So good evening, everyone, and welcome to this month's archive talk. The previous archive talk, which was the evolution of Ravenglass Station, is there on YouTube if anyone missed it. So please do go and have a look, and remember to subscribe to the YouTube channel. I'm going to hand over to Dave, because he knows more about what we're going to look at. And there's no pressure, Dave. I have seen James Waterfield has said good evening. So not only do we have the North American Heywood expert, we have our own Indigenous Heywood expert as well. So over to you, Dave.
Thank you very much. Hi, evening all. Now this, normally when I do the old presentations, there's no one here to contradict me. This time I'm actually expecting to be shot down quite a bit, so I have a pencil in my hand to make corrections, which I'll be happy to do. And we're going to quickly look at Katie's initial life, but fairly briefly. I can only recommend, as we've just heard, has joined us. I was going to recommend it anyway, but James's book is just superb on the earlier part of the history. So there's a little ad for James. Just a couple of quick shots from Eaton Hall to see what it looked like back then. This, we think, is 1897, and that one in front of the brick kilns, I think, is 1898. And then I don't have a date for that one because I've got no information on the back of that card. I think it might be a loco and general card, but shows slightly different. So we pick up the story when it came to Eskdale, and we haven't got very many early shots, which is probably the case. You know, I'm going to mention her. Mary was down in Colchester radiographing until at least 1918, and this again is fairly late because there are a couple of struts added from the weatherboard, and it's all looking a bit faded and tired. It did at least do some work, and I always like to throw this one in because it's a good view of the Heywood 3-ton bogey wagon at the back there, and it does look a fair load. So that might be why it stopped, trying to raise steam again, but we won't make that comment. Then this is 1919, and it's going off from Ravenglass, and it was taken on John Will's camera, but John Will's is standing camera left with Jim Lather, the chief guard, behind the smoke box, and Robert Johnson, the engineer, hanging onto the back end. I'm not sure I'd like to take on lifting 3 tons or so with just 2 men on a ratchet crane behind, but it got there.
I bet they were glad to see it go. If the contemporary reports and pictures, there's probably a sigh of relief that let's get it on the wagon as quick as possible.
Yes, unfortunately for John, Will's standing on the left, it was to revisit him later.
Just before you,
Yeah.
Matthew has asked, and I imagine it's the previous picture, and whether anyone knew where that had been taken on the railway. Where, that one.
That one. No. It's definitely on the Ratty, and it's definitely Katie, because the second print we got of it, is sharp enough to read Katie, and it's actually the more convincing evidence is that John Lister, Jack Lister, who was the driver, is the guy standing talking to the other guy who's sitting, and the other guy and the one at the back are both from our track gang. So we're fairly convinced it was here.
It must be somewhere below Earton Road, because the hills aren't big enough.
Yeah.
Possibly Murthwaite-ish.
It could be as far down as that. Yeah. We've always said there's a fairly tall pine just by the chimney there, and unless it's been chopped down, it might actually help. I might actually throw that to Mike and to James. As well as the original lubricator, there appear to be two more have appeared on the running board, which, to be honest, I've only just noticed. Any suggestions? Welcome on that. I'll plough on in the meantime.
Christopher's suggestion it could be around Watermill Summit.
Yes, yeah, because it was very open at that stage.
There are pine trees there now.
Could be. So off it goes. Notice they've taken the dome off and actually parked it on a wagon to save it getting the dent that it got later. So it went down to Southport, and again, there are very few pictures. We only have a couple of not particularly good prints. And then relatively quickly it went in 1919. This, we believe, is 1920. And by 1923, John Will's nemesis returned, and this is Fairbourne. And it is looking a bit tired. We move quickly on. When Count Louis arrived in 1925, that sort of sounded the death knell to Katie. And interestingly, I'm trying to think of the guy's name, one of the drivers was tasked with basically dismantling Katie, and found quite a reasonably large crack at the top of the crown of the firebox, which might explain the difficulty.
James is saying that the previous picture is being dragged dead out of the shed for the photograph.
Yes, I can imagine. And I thought the extra ones were a later edition. So having taken the boiler off and things, they then used the frames for this wagon. This isn't a very good print, but we think it's a print from a glass plate that we haven't managed to access yet. But fortunately, the guys on the left aren't quite so important as the wagon, and they actually used Ravenglass practice in that they had temporary seats that they could pop in there for overcrowding.
And Jordan has asked the question of how successful Katie was at Southport. It wasn't there long.
It wasn't there long. We had very few reports of it being there, and it got the impression that he got it as a spare and hoped that he didn't have to use it. but that's just an impression. So the wagon with the temporary seats lasted until about 1939, after which it was dismantled and the frames ended up deposited. Sorry, Mike, I took the colour out of yours because it was a very strange colour. And we have another one from John Nicholson, which gives more of a side view, the chassis as was. So that sat there until 1974, we think, when the frames were transferred to towing to the Narrow Gauge Railway Museum. So we jump on now, and the bit that returned, or the two bits that returned to Eskdale, was the side frames. And there were several money-raising events which happened. And again, I could have done with our curator being here.
I'm going to be Oakwood Day. When did the frames come to Ravenglass?
Sometime before 1990.
Right, okay, that'll do.
That's all I've got. Yeah, the dummy boiler, we think, was made by students under Arnold Staples at the college where he worked. And they didn't put the rivets on. I'm told the rivets were actually cast fiberglass and then stuck on. But I could be corrected. Yes. Yes, I should have mentioned that, shouldn't I?
I think there's an earlier version of it without the side panels on.
Oh, right.
It was
just the
wagon.
Just the wagon, yeah,
Mm.
and the boiler stuff, but without the frames.
Mm.
I think I've got one somewhere.
So at the time they'd taken Riveret's old dome and put that on for now. That was due to be extended height-wise to work better. So the idea was that it would be a sponsored push from Ravenglass up to Dalegarth, and duly received its Randa board.
Is that Bob giving the Randa board?
I believe that's
I
it.
don't think so, no.
Oh,
No,
I don't know who it is then,
no, it might. I suppose it might be, yeah.
because
No,
Graham's.
I don't think I went up on it. Oh, sorry, that's somebody just being given it from the.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
Graham's, and there's a young Owen Ryder,
Yeah, I say that's Elvis.
Yes.
Yeah.
and a young Jeff Holland.
Yeah, we'll go through.
Yeah.
We'll go through the roll call when we get to the other end, because I've got a nice
Have you
group
got more?
photo for that. Yeah, and Graham, who would have handed out the Randa board, is just grinning in the background. So they set off and got to the top of Ravenglass Bank, and then all jumped on. They did actually manage all to get on, apparently. Then started pushing again. I've got those the wrong way around, I think. Yeah, sorry, that one should have come first, and then that one, as they went past the mill. Up past the mill, I think, now, I may be wrong here, but are they approaching Mattside Loop on this one? Because that's where it feels to me, you know, just above Mattside Halt.
Looks like it. Christopher might know.
Yeah, that's correct, Dave.
Oh, lovely. Thank you.
And Christopher's confirmed as well.
It's just quite a lot of these are just colour prints which have nothing on the back. So, as is known, I'm making some of it up as I go along. I'm guessing that's coming up to Rock Point.
The smiles have diminished a little bit, haven't they?
And I think that's past Rock Point, but again, not absolutely certain on that. Then they got to Eaton Road, where Di Pickup was waiting with refreshments, as usually happened. And then there must have been an awful lot of pushing to do between Earton Road and Beckfoot Wood. This is top of Beckfoot Wood. So the end is in sight just round the corner, but no one had taken any photos between the two, or none that I have anyway. Yeah, good, thank you. Just checking. So they managed to arrive, and we can run through them left to right at the back. Peter Van Zeller, Peter Tebb, and I need to go back to my Marion Starkey, Heather Van Zeller, Adrian and Julie Smith, Dave Jenner, Owen Ryder, and then at the front, Jeff Holland, Chris Mancy, and Martin Zachary. So at least we have names for them all. One of the other projects to raise money was asking for £10 a tube to sponsor a tube. Mr. Decker got tubes 2, 3, and 4, and still wants to know who got number 1. As he's not here, I can't ask him tonight.
Are you speculating?
No.
Dave, that
Oh, no, wouldn't
it
dream.
may be our esteemed curator.
And the other great money-making scheme was to produce 101 replicas of the Katie nameplate, and we think they sold quite well. I need to check with Adrian Smith how many were actually sold in the end.
We know there's one in North Dakota.
Yes,
We've seen it on a previous archive tour.
and that's it.
Yeah.
And it's number 1962.
South Dakota.
South Dakota, sorry, Mike.
And just to prove that it's genuine, and this is the first time I've seen one of these certificates, certificate of authenticity. And just to prove it, it is 1962 as mentioned. So that was another scheme. And the other thing, when there were galas and things, Katie, in inverted commas, was brought out. Julie Smith did the big drawing at the back, painting at the back. And there's a little intruder in there.
Yeah.
Not quite sure where that came from.
But by this point, it's actually
It's
the
been
logo chassis
painted.
and proper frames, isn't it? Because it's
Yes,
got fly cranks on.
it's
and
been
things like
moving
that.
on. And that's around about 94, but I'm slightly vague on that.
Can you remember, Bob?
Well, it was a certain other locomotive arrived in, what was it, 94?
Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, that ties in. And that one I know is 1994 because it was Earth's centenary. And it's got some cladding around the boiler, and as you notice, the Pinocchio dome has actually increased in height.
And the whistle.
And the whistle. Not sure whether that was the Katie whistle or did they put Muriel's on for a while.
Jordan's asked whether the
It's not
wheels
the one
recovered
that's on it
or
now.
new ones.
That's a very good question. Does anyone out there know?
Were the wheels brand new or were the recovered ones?
As I know, there were recovered ones from somewhere, but where, I don't know.
Right.
There may well be a part 2 to this talk when all the questions are answered. Muriel's whistle, I'm told, so not a bad guess. Then I think this is the gala in May 95. It certainly suggests it is, because when they got to the other end, they very carefully posed it to appear as though steam was coming out of Yeah,
Did-
that's fine.
And David Rounds thinks the wheels are new to the best of his knowledge because they're slightly bigger than they should be.
Right, so that's a big question mark that I need to double check on.
And
Wheels.
Christopher has said that's 1996 and wants to celebrate Katie's centenary.
Oh, right. And there was, I've been really positive because someone had put 27,595 on the back. It's 96, okay. I stand correct.
It was a barbecue train that we organised, and I seem to remember it chucking it down.
Yes.
That's Owen Ryder talking, Dave.
Right.
Yes. Who's on the footplate
Who's
despite the
featured
rain.
there.
Yes.
And I believe the wheels were not Katie's original ones, but they weren't made new. They were off something else, and I can't remember what they were off,
All right.
but they were second hand.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, that covers it. Yeah, we have a couple somewhere in the archive. We have a couple of tickets from the barbecue. Once again, another fundraising exercise, so that's handy. Then sort of major step forward. Jordan's suggesting that there were possibly Dundee's wheels. I don't know on that one. I'll put it in as a question mark.
But they weren't used on 15-inch cage Bonnie Dundee.
No,
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 but they were
no,
quite big.
yeah,
We'll do some research, Dave.
yes.
Yes.
Look out for part two. So this is Katie's. This is at Sam Maud's at Sheffield. Katie's boilers on the left, and Ursula is featured on the right.
And James is confirming that, and he should know because
Yes,
Ursula's his.
yes. So we have a couple more shots. This is Katie's backplate with the I'm sounding intelligent here, but I'm just reading with the firebox welded in prior to riveting inside the boiler barrel. It's my story, I'm sticking to it. A view from the other end and a view from the side. So it was a major step forward to convince the world and his wife that it was going to be a reality. So it was quite significant. Then I think, and again, I could be shot down. I think this is January the 1st, 2000. And the next push that was done with her was in the opposite direction. And this is Sheila taking Katie up to the top ready for the push. Checked on the way, not entirely sure what Peter thought might be falling off down there, but he was checking to see if anyone had dropped something.
And is it carrying the proper boiler by this point?
Yes.
Yeah. So it'll go down the hills better. Now, we'll edit that comment out.
Yes. Yeah, we will quietly ignore that one.
Yeah. We'll not find any carrots.
And
I think we were lubricating the axle boxes in that photograph.
right. Yeah.
Reaching down, there was an oil pipe going into the top of the axle boxes, but there wasn't an oil box. That's what I think that is.
Okay, thank you, Owen.
Excellent. I'm going to have to do a load of rewriting on this, but I'm quite happy to do that, I have to say. Catch up.
And it's gained a smokebox star as well.
Yes, I believe that was also fiberglass, but I'll throw that out. And having got there, ready to set off again, I think you could have polished it. It would appear.
Towards maybe.
Oh, right. Excellent.
Mm.
One more. It would appear that either it was slightly running away or there was more pushing than was planned. But again, there's not very many pictures of the
Well,
top end.
We'll ask Owen, because Owen was there, I think. And Owen, was there much pushing on the New Year's Day journey?
There was some to do, but it was mainly a ride down. I mean, it was New Year's Day, so you know, there'd been a few beverages consumed the previous evening.
Really?
Yeah, the guy in that photograph there is Simon Thomas.
Oh, right. In the yellow debris.
Yeah, it was a university friend of mine that helped out with the heritage group quite a bit, and in particular with ICL number 1.
Oh, right. Yeah, so we'll have featured him before when we did RCL one. Was that when you actually got it running?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. All right, that's excellent. And possibly Jackie can confirm to me, but is the person in the green top Jackie by any chance?
It does look like Jackie from behind, doesn't it? There's a familiar stance there.
It's not me.
It's not you.
No, don't think so.
Was it? Had it been a good New Year's Eve?
I can't remember.
So
Wasn't that the sort of night time they started on 31st of December 1990?
no, that was a separate trip. That was the into New Year, and then the Katie push started from Ravenglass at 10 in the morning.
Ah, right, okay,
and
that's fine,
went
yeah.
up. But yeah, there was fireworks at Hurton Road, and obviously a glass, because I think it might have been Owen that provided the fireworks. So the next pictures that we have, they were racing, because there were plans to stop at some point so that the service train could overtake. And they actually got down as far as Lancaster Mill and locked themselves into the siding there, so that Martin Willey could come in. Not quite sure why he stopped, but he did stop, maybe just to get some photos. So he was there for a while. And then once Martin had cleared down to Ravenglass, they set off again on the last stretch and arrived at Ravenglass, and Terry Taylor on the left had been taking the exact time, and he counted it as 1 hour, 38 minutes and 26 seconds. I think certainly on one of the runs, people were asked to guess the time, and 50p a guess. So again, it all went towards making the money. We then go to later in the year and a fine little shot at Ravenglass. This would be May 2000. And somebody's going to mention the bridge.
It was for the 125 gala.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And of course, the wonderful Heywood dining car.
Sam Dixon has been predictable for you there, Dave.
Thank you, Sam. We're not going into that again.
The Effie replica is the one that David Humphreys had built by Great Northern Steam, and now lives, well, it's at Cleethorpes, and
All right.
has been there for quite some time.
And it was named Admiralty by
Sir Peter Heywood
Sir Peter.
with a bottle of Black Sheep Yorkshire Square Ale.
See, all these details, I'm going to have to go back and
Yes.
listen to it so I can write them all down. Yeah, the lovely.
Yes, that was the FE that the motion kept seizing. Yes.
Yeah, we just-
Into Ravenglass station. seems to be-
We're just ignoring comments about the bridge. It's difficult again because I'm not certain on timings, but I think I've got this down as 2002 when the cylinders were cast, and it's probably good to say at this point that Ian Page put in a lot of unseen work into the project. So it's worth remembering that. And those are all the bits and pieces all ready for assembly. And unfortunately, it was around about this time where I believe they were hoping for some workshop space to progress it a bit further, but unfortunately, this is 2013 and circumstances dictated that there was no chance of that.
And James has
Oh,
said
right.
that he made the cylinder patterns to a drawing by Owen Ryder, and we were talking about Owen's drawings earlier, weren't we?
Yes, we were.
Yes.
At some stage, if it would be possible to borrow them, Owen, we're compiling an object history file for Katie, and little details like that would be wonderful to add in. We can scan them and return them.
Yeah, I can send you the scanned PDFs of them if you like.
Oh, brilliant. Oh, that's even better.
I suspect the coach is the new disabled saloon that was built in the workshop here, but we'll see, because someone has added, and Christopher has added it is 138, which was under construction. Am I correct on that, Christopher?
All gone quiet.
He's gone quiet. He's typing frantically. Yes.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So the outcome was that it was agreed to send all the bits off to Station Road Steam, and James very kindly offered to help coordinate. And sorry,
There you are.
The arthritic fingers again. And part of the coordination was Roxham Broad was due to go back to Bure Valley, and they very kindly dropped off Katie behind that screen on the way. And then I've actually stolen these pictures from the magazine, because I think I'm actually missing quite a lot of under construction photos, so I can put out a general appeal if people have them. They'd be gratefully accepted. And not scooting through this too fast, but you can see the development and the end result, basically.
And Jordan is suggesting we approach John Tasker, who worked at Station Road Steam at the time.
Oh, right.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, it may well be that some of those photos I've just shown, they were credited to Station Road Steam, and they may well be his. but it would be nice to get higher definition copies.
Now, I think actually most of them did come from Station Road, Steve.
Hmm.
I don't think I'll get any. Jackie Farrow used to get one at least on the visit she managed to make. to
Right.
it, but I didn't get to it during much of the build
Hmm.
period.
I mean, even the ones earlier on, I've seen a photocopy of some photos of big ends and things laid out on the floor, but again, I haven't got a decent picture, so we'll put that out as a general appeal. Yeah, so it's quite a big wagon for a little Katie.
Oh dear.
I think I've described that as under wraps.
If only he'd
Oh.
kept his legs under wraps.
Oh, sorry, Sam, you were there before me, actually. And just to sort of demonstrate the new tall dome.
It's not William.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then we went to, I thought I had the British engineering inspector doing a cold inspect of it, but we seem to have jumped onto Jack wanting to get it going.
I think that's Tony Cavallo, isn't it?
Yes.
Background, yeah.
No, you may be suggesting it's lunchtime.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, the rapidly evolving Esk in the background on the left there. The fire. And it goes. He does look quite happy there, doesn't he?
He's got his stout Macintosh as well.
That's coming later.
Sorry.
I think this went under the heading of minor adjustments. Just little tweaks when they took it out for a play.
Its first move on the steam from the workshop to the carriage shed area, possibly to the loco shed, with taking a coach up to the carriage shed.
Oh, right.
And Will was on the engine with Jack. And I have a photo taken through that window.
All
of
right.
them.
I see. The request for photos is,
Photo could go in the museum collection, couldn't it?
yes,
Yeah.
it could do.
David Rounce managed to take it off my phone.
Oh,
So whether he's still got that, I've still got it on my phone. If you want to take it off, Dave.
David Round says, don't blame him. Jack looks very pleased with himself there, doesn't he?
yes.
Yes.
Yeah, but that was after the carriage move.
And keeping the fire out. And that's quite a nice picture of Ian Page looking quite proud, sitting on Katie, which it's a nice shot. And Graham Vincent, who rescued a couple of window brasses from the Eaton Hall locos as they were being cut up, and who took 4 pictures at the time. This is Sue Whitehouse, who's Graham's daughter, and it was sort of appropriate that she should be there for the rededication. And at the time she was saying, and all who ride behind her.
And what's behind Peter?
It's one of James's
Yes,
carriages that he brought along for the launch.
there were 2. Sorry, I haven't featured that very much. And as it was ratty special event weather, in that it was pissing down, the stout Macintosh was really the only apparel for the guard. I think you were the guard on that one.
I was
was
the
it?
guard on that, yeah.
Did you have a lot of dignitaries on your train?
Who could get onto it? Yes,
Yeah.
I mean, it was 2 open coaches, but they all had tickets.
Mm. And even though it was still persisting down,
No, it did all the way.
it struck someone as a good idea to do a run past. So all the camera people
Everybody
left out.
invited was told to bring us down McIntyre.
Yes. And they made it to a rather drizzly Delgarth.
Published a few times.
And this is slightly later on. The gentleman in with Peter is another Peter, Sir Peter Luff, who's chair of the Heritage Lottery Fund. And he was given a ride, and Julie went off with a souvenir, which he seems quite pleased about. And when he had a look around the museum and went to write in the visitors book, 3 lovely words: money well spent.
I ripped the page out immediately afterwards.
Yeah, candle.
Reservation.
Okay.
And I thought I'd throw this one in because it's nice that you've got 3 historical locos, but if you think back to 1925, it was the arrival of Count Louis at Fairbourne that summoned the death knell for Katie. So I hope they've made up since then. And then, having got it working, it was put to work. And what you can't see is someone had the idea that they looked a bit like stocks.
Very good.
Yeah. And I also had to put this one in. It's the way Jack's concentrating on keeping the shovel level, but the paparazzi following every move.
So, although quite a lot of it's early operating here, not the first time around, although he was probably around. Peter was sort of there as driver. Usually he had Jack with him,
Yes.
supervising him, and Jack has very much sort of become the godfather of the engine because he tends to appear every time it's in steam just to make sure it's okay.
Well, yes.
And is often featured in lots of pictures of it.
Mm-hmm. Then I think this was a double header for the boot centenary train, which would be July 2018, and everyone's getting ready. And I've got a couple of other shots, but I thought I'd just put 2 in. That one's quite nice, nice known location. And on that one, with the positioning of the camera, in answer to Jordan's question, so long as you don't overload it, and certainly on that inaugural run, it hammered up the valley without blow-ups or picking flowers.
The consensus of opinion is if they get themselves ready properly and don't expect it to come round and in the sort of blasé manner of leaving Ravenglass with £100 and it'll be reads. If they get themselves ready and keep on top of it, and it on 2 coaches, it isn't entirely happy, but if you put a bit more behind it, it gives it something to get its teeth into, and it steams and quite nicely. And there's been some quite spirited runs with no having to sit and smoke a pipe or anything like that while it's going. And it's certainly at the gala weekends and things when it's been out, it's done very, very well.
Mhm.
And I think in one of the books that was it's either the Duffield Bank book, the old Duffield Bank one, the brown one,
Mm.
or the volume 1 of 15-inch gauge railways. There's reference to it being quite speedy,
Mm.
and it does have traits of that if they get carried away. And in answer to Matthew's question, with the 2 maxi coaches, it was quite content wandering around the railway with the driver getting soaking wet and the passengers in, and they were packed. They went very full. So it does do very well. And Robert was the guard in the pouring way, and he's confirmed that. So I think there is a bit where everyone's still getting used to it, because it doesn't tend to go up the line that much, and so they're still learning. But now it tends to go with either Will, Phil, or Keith, and they certainly go with the sort of, we're not going to show ourselves up attitude. So they do have a good go at it. And the Will did receive the praise at the gala in not 20, the one where Talisman and the West Country went past, which was 2021, I think. He did get the praise from the curator. That was the best run he'd seen with the engine ever.
Wow.
So high praise indeed.
Yes, indeed.
So Arthur claimed 20 miles an hour. I can't possibly comment whether, but I suspect that is achievable. Yes,
I would imagine
yes.
so. Under the rope.
There's the book.
That on a test run last autumn, it was making scheduled time and maybe a little bit better, just for test purposes, of course.
Oh yes,
Yeah,
of course.
yeah.
But when we did the sponsors push on the downhill run, we achieved 21 miles per hour.
Oh, brilliant.
What was it up over the marsh, shall we?
I don't remember that, but I remember counting the rail joints as we came down Millwood. It was 21 miles an hour.
That's seriously impressive. Could it go back to Eaton Hall?
The Duke of Westminster has his railway,
Mm-hmm.
and I think if we were asked, it would be very nice to do that.
Yeah.
But I don't think we've been asked yet.
Right.
Mhm.
I'm not there with the request, but yeah, why not?
There you are.
Then there were various bits of driver training with assorted loads. I'm just not going to comment on this one at all. Someone who was there might care to comment.
That is Jackie this time.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm just not quite sure what Peter's doing or has done, or
Well, it could have been a practice for the COVID cough of the future.
I do look a bit fed up.
You do, Jackie, yeah.
I wasn't going to point that out. Yeah, Robert Fox is asking, and I have to throw it out to the people who know a lot more than me.
They
Have Eaton Hall ever had a gala?
because St Alder's been.
Oh, right.
Mm.
So the answer is yes.
And I think James took Ursula, and I believe Effie's been as well at points.
Oh, right. So yes, in that case.
And Simon has said the Cagney has also been.
Oh, right.
And Red Dragon. Now Prince Edward of Wales.
Yeah, I'm having difficulty keeping up with even the old name changes. Then this was a trip down to Leys in 2019. And as someone pointed out, the front Katie's boiler is substantially bigger than ours.
So that in that picture, you have got the Duke of Westminster's Katie, because it is his.
All right.
With Dave Owen, who is the keeper of it at Eaton Hall. And I think that was built as a combination with FMB Engineering and Alan Keith's. And it's quite an industrial boiler on it. But it's a very nice engine.
Yeah,
It's just not quite as pretty as the original one.
And I mean, if they weren't side by side,
You would never know.
comparing
No.
them.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And again, both of the engines there, Kirklees does have traits of Eaton Hall with continuous gradients and bits of it. And James had commented when he took Ursula there a few years previously, both locos did a continuous 22-minute run, regulator up and all the way, because it's uphill all the way and you have to work, and they did it. And again, it's challenging our previous knowledge that John Wills sat waiting for steam to come, because wasn't an issue.
There is a point there that everyone says it's John Wills waiting for steam to come up, but I think he's just sitting
Taking
there
the viewing,
and he's just coming up that little hill to the crossing at Estelle Green, and I think he's just letting it sort of coast in. I don't think he's actually stopped on that one, but
challenged the story. Yeah.
well, yes.
Yeah.
Then also 2019, Katie went off to Beamish with Riverert and a whole carriage between them. And they topped and tailed it, and it was quite a dramatic success. It took a lot of convincing to get across to most people that we weren't just part of the Beamish setup, and that we were. So in the end, if I go back one, see there's quite a large banner underneath the coach on there. We dug the banner out and we stretched it across to make it obvious that it was
You weren't Beamish.
the Ravenglass nest on tour. But it made for some really nice photos, not least because it actually takes you back a considerable number of years with the 15-inch laid between the standard gauge. So that was quite nice. And around about this time, there was some competition between the drivers as to who might be the most appropriately dressed. I'm not going to pass a comment on that.
What?
Yes, Matthew is saying we ran full on most trains for 4 days, and they were quite long days as well. The response we got from the public was
very good, wasn't it?
tremendous. Yeah.
And in the best dressed driver stakes, what's quite interesting is, apart from Keith, both Will and Phil have their Katie driving costumes with waistcoats, pocket watches, and Will even has a wooden seat that Richard Rothery made for him, like Ella had, so that he can sit comfortably on the railing.
Yes. Then I haven't got an awful lot of recent photos, but this is 2022, when Will and Beck went back to Beamish. It was display only. It was not running, but it's a fine wagon. They put Katie in the back. Then also in 2022, Ert and Katie had a wander down to Romney, and there's some lovely pictures. This was for their 75th anniversary gala.
There's some nice videos on YouTube of it as well, of both of them running down there.
Yes, unfortunately, I'm still stuck on the stills. I haven't even started on moving pictures. If there are any volunteers out there, I'd like to help with movies. Gratefully accepted again. And finally, back to the end of 2022, where it took up its now customary position as Rudolph, with the sleigh behind. And again, I think public kids really like the idea of getting in there and getting the photos taken. So that went down quite well.
It is interesting that a lot of children, when Katie's out, are really quite obsessed with it.
Yes.
And it was similar with Effie when that's been to the railways. They do seem, there seems to be something in them that appeals to children.
Yes.
In a way that the other engines don't, and I don't know why. Whether it's just because they're quirky and
reminiscent
Yeah,
of Thomas
I
the
don't
Tank. I don't know. Could be something with the shape.
All children is possible.
Yes.
They are very appealing. And apart from
Gala Rog
yes,
was pilotman.
yeah, well, we have to make sure we squeeze most people in when we're doing these covering. So apart from a request that if you do have photos and anything,
That's Matthew Feldweek doing driver for a fiver, which was, it did for a couple of summers, and everyone got a certificate.
yeah, oh yes,
yeah, and that was quite a useful
and the
source of
t-shirt.
revenue.
It was pretty popular. Yeah, most of the days it ran pretty well occupied all the time.
And also, I think we were giving free trips to anyone called Katie. There was an element of that.
Really?
There. Yes. Because we have 3 or 4 pictures of ladies standing next to Katie.
But even when static in the museum, you get Katie's people
Yes.
wanting photos of it.
Yes, we've been asked, do we not do any miniature replicas, because Katie particularly would be a good present.
We do the pin badges.
Yes.
Ashley will be only too happy if you go on the railway company's online shop and to sell them.
Yes,
£3 or £4 something.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe the Preservation Society, they always like a plug. If they go, I think you can go on their website. I think you can get a Katie hat.
Yes.
I think.
And we've just bought a Katie hoodie for my grandson, which we're saving for his birthday in April. But that looks brilliant. The embroidered one, it's really nice. So yeah, I'm sort of tailing off and get to the point of rambling on here. But yeah, as a troll for more material, I'm quite happy to do a part 2 and sort of fill in some of the details and some of the intricacies, because there's an awful lot to the reproduction, rebirth, whatever it is. A lot of hard work went in by a lot of people, and it's paid off.
It has. It's a really nice asset and popular. And of course, we've got to acknowledge the Sport Preservation Society,
Oh, yes.
because without them, it would probably still be sat in the back of the carriage shed.
Yes. So as usual, the Society Trust made a massive difference, and it is appreciated.
Mhm. And I think the other thing is we're still learning. When each time it goes out, the operations team are learning more, and the sort of quirks of which James had learned a lot with Ursula, and we're
Yes.
learning with Katie. And certainly history with Katie, the early years of probably, which you can read about, are probably more reminiscent of what we're experiencing with it.
Yes, so we do recommend the book. It's superb pictures and a lot of useful information.
There is red herrings with Katie, though, isn't there? When you look, and Matthew might have picked up on one earlier, in the Katie nameplate ended up on one of the later engines, didn't it?
Yes, it did.
Yeah.
It was swapped.
Yeah, hey, it's Matthew here. Yeah, I think it ended up on the 5th Heywood engine. The sister to Ursula was originally called Sheila. I think she was the Duke of Westminster's wife, and I think they got divorced, and so the Duke of Westminster changed it to Katie.
Yes, I believe you're right.
This seems to be the trait of estate railways, because Sir Robert Walker was equally guilty, wasn't
We just got rid of the engine.
Yes, and regauged the railway. It was that bad.
Just on another thing, is there any truth to this, to the rumour that before they sold Katie in 1919, they had thought about putting a conventional loco boiler on it with a proper firebox, or is that just something that like an urban legend kind of thing?
No, it's a known story, and in terms of certainly talking about another engine, which we will be talking about, or at least our curator will be talking about at some stage this year, whose centenary it is.
What, Flying Scotsman?
There are quite a few references that are confusing, including one in one of the railway magazines in 1919, when Sir Aubrey was just sort of taking off. There is actually a quote that says, Mr. Couchy is in the process of designing a 282 locomotive, which we expect will arrive in the next couple of years. And that was 2 years before Greenlee actually appeared at Ravenglass. And yes, there was another story about them cranking up the firebox of one of the engines with a jack, which apparently wasn't the recommended way of dealing with it. So yeah, there are a few stories, and there were certainly proposals well before they actually did it with River Ert, to add a locomotive boiler to Katie, possibly Ella. Ella was going to be a petrol electric at one stage. We have a drawing for that. So lots of pipe dreams.
Peter's theory is if Rivermite 1 had been made using Katie at one end and Ella at the other, we would probably still have Rivermite 1.
Yes.
However, I'm not sure that, I think that's a lot of articulation.
No, I think the major problem with, or at least it's a bit.
David has corroborated that as well.
Evening all, Andy here. I've just been looking through some 1925 model engineers. I don't know if you guys have access to them. There's a number of articles by Henry Greenley about his new locomotive for Ravenglass.
Yes.
You got them? Brilliant.
Most, I think.
Excellent. I was looking for Romney stuff, and you know, these things just have to catch my eye like they do.
Yes, that's how we find, you know, sort of references to others. Now that I'm being sort of forced out into looking at other railways in more detail, it's been a very steep learning curve, and I'm not very far up it yet.
Excellent. Well, I think that has certainly been a summary of Katie, and there's probably more, as you said, there's more we could probably do in the future.
Yes.
And it may be interesting to try and persuade Peter to dock some practice and performance and things like that. And we'll try and pin him down at some point. Thank you everyone, as usual, for tuning in. Hope you have found it interesting. We probably will be back next month. First Thursday as ever. And
by then we might have thought
of the topic. We've got some ideas.
Oh yes,
yes. But if anyone thinks of any comment on YouTube of future things we might do, we've got some ideas.
Have you got proposed extensions on your list, like the proposed Muncaster extension, or Howie's proposed extension to Ambleside, or that, something like that?
Yeah.
Pictures of the issue, really, are.
Yeah, in the case of the former, it's difficult for me to comment without knowing what actually went on. But it's always occurred to me that if you came as a punter and you were just coming for the day, and you were offered the choice of a 7-mile trip for X pounds or a 2-mile trip for less pounds, then it would be good for Muncaster, but it wouldn't necessarily be good for the railway, because I think we'd lose the revenue. And in the case of the Ambleside extension, it was flights of fantasy. No one had looked at it seriously, and even the amount of money that Howie could have put into it, I just can't see it without it being 3 separate railways, you know, so one to take you to the bottom of Hardknot, another one somehow to take you over the top, and then one to connect at the other side to take you to Ambleside. So it really was a non-starter. But that's just my opinion.
Matthew, David, there are drawings, I think, aren't there, in the museum of the Muncaster extension?
Yes.
And also the outward bound extension.
Well, I thought we weren't supposed to mention
I
can edit it out. There's
also
to the Burnmore Inn.
Which I was going to say, there's also the Burnmore Inn one as well, which was just a line on a map.
Yes, and obviously the other one that David Webb actually followed up was the extension to Eaton Hall.
Yeah.
And when he got in touch with Cecil Allen, and we have the letters between the two, he said, what's the possibility of you still having the survey there, because we haven't got it at this end? And Alan said, no, sorry, it would have been not exactly on the back of an envelope, but it was very basic and
yeah.
appeared. But apparently, and this is something we could chase. Some material and some rail went to Eaton Hall when they were building a dam or digging out for a dam. And
Right.
I've only ever seen the one reference, no more detail.
Yeah, I think it's in the W. Davies book. He briefly mentions it, and I think if you look on Google Earth, you can just about make out the reservoir up in the woods that was supposedly what was built. It's now largely silted up. You can just about still see it.
All right.
We're accused of holding Typhoon. That is Typhoon in the back there. Next to its much prettier, greenly designed sister. Typhoon is not being held hostage. It's waiting decisions on heading off for overhaul, and yeah, it's quite at home at the moment. Yes, we'll see what we can send back instead. Yes, and Matt Nunn from the Lakeshore Miniature Railroad at South Shields has suggested perhaps Tales of Little Giants escapades in the 70s.
With Tom Tate.
Yes.
Now, curiously, I've very recently been looking at some correspondence from Tom Tate, and there aren't an awful lot of photos, but we may be able to drag out a few photos. It may not be a massive one in terms of his railway.
If it's any help, I've got some photographs in my collection of the railway that Little Giant used to run on at South Shields. If they're any help, there's only a couple, but they're worthwhile probably seeing and adding into the mix.
Oh yes, please. That would be brilliant.
There could be a Little Giant talk, actually.
Oh, there is.
Yes,
Definitely. I didn't want to step on Simon's toes too much, but we're beginning to get material together to try and do a better backstory for Little Giant, as we're hoping to keep it for another few years.
Another 7 at the minute, isn't it?
And yes, yeah, I mean, we can definitely do a Little Giant one. It may just take me a little bit more time to get to it, but yeah, we have found some photos recently, and again, I'm start on these things, and I'm learning all the time. I didn't know it went to the Isle of Wight. So yeah,
Learning all the time.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So I would suggest that we have quite a few topics that we can cover. So
That's far too controversial, Mr. Dixon.
I'm trying to avoid mentioning that, Trevor. And Jackie would like that talk as well. Maybe Jackie could be a guest speaker on the Constable Bridge. Now, before we incriminate and enlist anyone else, we probably say good night, everyone. And as ever, thank you for watching. We'll get this onto YouTube as quick as we can. All the other talks are there. Do go and have a look. And if you need insomnia cures or anything like that, do visit the museum page on YouTube. All the talks are there now, and this one will be there shortly. And keep a lookout on Facebook for when the next one will be. Hopefully the first Thursday in April. And we will find out. Dave will keep us in suspense as to what it's going to be. But thank you all for watching.
Thank you.
Hope to see you all soon.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Good night.